back. We're live. The 11 o'clock rock here on a Monday. First show of the week. I'm Jay Fidel, and the handsome young man sitting next to me is Rich Turbin. Hi, Rich.
Hey, Jay. I know, of course, you're lying, but that's okay. I accept the lie. You know.
This is an important show. This is our Asia in Review series. We're talking about the transitions at the East-West Center. And Rich, if you hadn't heard, is now the chair of the East-West Center Board of Governors. So he's the man. So welcome, 1,000 welcomes.
Thank you, Jay. It's great to be here, and we're so appreciative what ThinkTech does to get our society here, get our Hawaii more sophisticated and knowledgeable about Asia, the Asian Pacific area, which is no doubt the most important area of the world right now.
Agreed to that, absolutely. So there's so much happening around, East-West Center and around Hawaii's connection with Asia and all that. Let's start working on the news here. First thing that comes to mind is your election. How did you do that? How can I do that?
Yeah.
How can the next guy do that? We all want to be chair of the East-West Center.
Put it this way, just a confluent of circumstances, so to speak, and sometimes the last man standing, gets elected head of a board or chief of something.
You've been on the board for a while.
Yeah, I've been on the board for a while, and I've been vice chair for 5 years, and Rick Sujimura had been chair, had done a great job, but there's in the bylaws, you can only be chair for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So his term was ending, and since I had been vice chair, or was the standing vice chair, I guess it was kind of logical to, ascend me to the top of the ladder for at least a little while.
Well, besides being a trial lawyer, you have plenty of experience in Asia. You've not only been there, but you have been there at the crucible time in the time of Vietnam, and you served in the Peace Corps. So that must have taught you a lot of stuff. And those were the days when the East-West Center was born. That was
right.
The whole notion, came up as a matter of American diplomacy to create the East-West Center in the 60s, and you were there involved in that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, ironically, after law school, as I mentioned, I went into the Peace Corps. I was in the Peace Corps in Western Samoa, a lawyer there, actually working as a deputy attorney general. I had done my Peace Corps training on Molokai, which was absolutely stunningly beautiful. That was my introduction to Hawaii. So I desperately wanted to come back to Hawaii after I finished up my term in the Peace Corps. Ironically, I was very much into the East-West Center because the East-West Center was formed in 1960. By 1970, when I was getting out of the Peace Corps, it was really had met its stride. It was doing a great job. It was a very, very important organization. It still is. And I applied to become an East-West Center grantee, and I was awarded an East-West Center grant. But literally, on the day that I received the grant, that was the day that I received notice that I passed the Hawaii bar exam, because I was working as a lawyer, and I decided, I wanted to. I wanted to do my chops as a Hawaii lawyer.
Yeah.
But I'd always, been involved with the East-West Center ever since. And when I was president of the Bar Association, we did a couple of joint projects with the East-West Center. So I was very happy when I was appointed to the Board of Governors of the East-West Center.
This is perfect for you, from Harvard Law School on forward, with all your experiences in Asia. And at the East-West Center now, it's fully appropriate that you be the chair. So what's your administration going to look like, Rich? You got a particular, direction?
We have a big job ahead of us, and we're engaged in it right now. Our president, the hired executive director, so to speak, of the East-West Center, we call him or her the president. And for the past 18 years, we've had an excellent president, Dr. Charles Morrison, and he is retiring as of August 1st. So we are now engaged in a search for a new president of the East-West Center. And by the way, so if any of you listeners out there are interested in the job or know somebody who would be interested in the job and well qualified for the job, send your application to Mr. Derek Wilkinson at the Boyden Global Search Firm located in Washington, D.C. They're doing the search. They're doing the search for us.
Yeah, this is definitely.
We just started.
This is definitely a search that has to be global. I mean, certainly, I mean, it's possible to find somebody in Hawaii. It always is, but it's not all that likely. I would say, though, that in the case of the East-West Center, there are a lot of, and maybe there should be some outreach here, a lot of retired diplomatic officials who have served with the State Department through thick and thin, and they like to retire out here. And we will see them at the Pacific Forum CSIS Board of Governors meeting this Wednesday.
Right, Wednesday
at the
night.
Hilton Hawaiian Village. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm sure we have. I mean, already the search began approximately 2 weeks ago. And we're getting a lot of interest. A large number of very qualified people have expressed interest in the position. But this is the time where we are inviting and encouraging people to make their application.
So it has to be an American, or not?
There's nothing in the law that says it has to be an American, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that approximately half of our yearly income comes from Congress, comes from an appropriation from the U.S. Congress. That's about half, $16.7 million a year. We bring in about 15 to 17 million from other sources.
Has the state of Hawaii been a source for you?
At times it has been. Last year, I believe it was last year, they appropriated several $million for improvement of our physical plant because our buildings are owned by the East-West Center, but we sit on land that's owned by the state of Hawaii.
The university.
Yeah, the university.
Hey, again, we need to talk about that because we're kind of shaping Mr. Potato Man, the guy who gets this job.
Yeah.
So the East-West Center is a federal entity. It was created by Congress, right?
Well, it's a nonprofit corporation,
Okay.
actually. It's registered in Hawaii.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's a non-profit corporation that's independent of any government agency,
good.
which is a great thing. But our funding comes through, as I said, it's appropriated by the U.S. Congress, but it funnels through the State Department. So we are aligned with the U.S. State Department, and often will perform particular tasks that are ideally suited for the East-West Center. Because, we're an educational and diplomatic institute, but as an independent nonprofit corporation, technically, we're not bound by strictures,
Yeah.
strict strictures of American foreign policy, for example.
But you're a reflection of one piece of American foreign policy, and that's to bring the East and the West together.
Exactly, sure.
And it's although the structure would be different, it's like the APCSS, the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Waikiki, that Dan Inouye created some years ago, to sort of invite officials from Asia to come here and be trained about Asia Pacific security issues, all kinds of issues, military issues, economic issues, climate change issues, every kind of issue. They come, they get trained at the expense of the U.S. federal government, and they get to meet each other and form relationships. And when they go back, this is the APCSS experience, the school they get there, lasts them forever in good stead, and they're closer to each other, which we want, and they're closer to the U.S., which of course we want. And I think Department of Defense funds that one.
Exactly, yeah. So there are some analogies, between the East-West Center and the APCSS, but the APCSS is, funded by the Pentagon. It deals with, military, as you mentioned, military strategic issues. But of course, the East-West Center is non-military, non-defense. We deal with more, environmental issues, educational issues, training. We really try to do, there's been, in recent years, a lot of emphasis on leadership training for young leaders in Asia, in the United States and elsewhere. We've had this new generation training program for young political leaders, where young, let's say, parliamentarians from various Asian countries come out to the East-West Center for. It's a multi-month program, 2 to 6 months.
And it's funded by the center itself.
Yeah, it's funded by the East-West Center. Yeah, exactly.
And I know you're close with the journalist program. I can't remember the name of it right now, where you send journalists out.
Jefferson Fellows.
Jefferson Fellows. Where they come from Asia to Hawaii and also the mainland to, I guess, be exposed to the U.S. and they write stories about that. And vice versa, American journalists are sent to Asia to write stories about their experience in Asia. This is all very, very good for building bridges with Asia.
Exactly, yeah, building bridges. Yeah, I'm glad you came out with that terminology, Jay. That's really what we're doing more than anything. I mean, it's a great slogan, building bridges.
Yeah.
Between the United States and Asia. And I want to point out an interesting fact. I mean, since the beginnings of the East-West Center, at last count, we've had 6 leaders, either presidents or prime ministers of major Asian nations that have been East-West Center alumni. So,
a very prestigious place to be. I mean, for them and of course for the center to have them and have them as graduates. And you have a lot of technology going on. Meheru Jasawala was into satellites, and she was a very well educated Indian woman who spent most of her professional career, educational career, teaching and writing and producing content essentially at the East-West Center. A lot of it was about satellites. Come to find, the East-West Center is into satellites, again, bringing people together. And right now we have a host whose name is Anukriti Hittle, who is a visiting scholar at the East-West Center. We have many scholars who have come from the East-West Center. So you have scholars who are very significant intellects from all over the world there, and it serves a great purpose to put Hawaii on the intellectual map, on the educational map, and to build those bridges on an educational level. Yeah.
And by the way, it's important to note that there are other very important Hawaii institutions that to some extent emanated, were fostered through the East-West Center. The Polynesian Voyaging Society, for example. The East-West Center was the organization that brought out that wonderful navigator from Micronesia who got the whole Hokulea missions started. So to some extent, the Polynesian Voyaging Society in Hokulea, came from the East-West Center. The Hawaii International Film Festival actually was spawned at the East-West Center. I mean, eventually these organizations became independent and so large that they, left the East-West Center, but to some extent, it was our progeny.
Yeah.
APEC.
Oh, a big connection.
Big connection. I mean, an argument can be made that APEC was spawned from an organization called PEC, which was, the Asia Economic Community. And then later on, the PEC leaders formed the idea of having political leaders, putting a political entity to it. And then, of course, it became APEC, which is so huge. And in 2000, I guess it was 2006, was it 2006 or 2007, when APEC was in Hawaii. It was administrated by the East-West Center.
Yeah, that was very important. And the East-West Center is a direct part of that, and I think Hillary Clinton came out for that.
Right,
she was Secretary of State.
Yeah, she came out 3 times when she was Secretary of State.
She likes the East-West Center, and that just goes for the notion that the East-West Center is However, the relationship exactly exists legally. It's an instrument of American diplomacy. It is right on that continuum. And therefore, the person, and we're going to talk about this person in greater detail, who was selected as the next president for the next time, so to speak, in the evolution of the 21st century, we're going to talk about what that person can do. The power, the possibility, the innovation, these fantastic initiatives that have happened, that could happen, that should happen, according to the view of the chair.
Right.
That's Rich Turbin. He's the chair of the East-West Center. We're talking about transitions at the East-West Center here on Asia in Review. We'll be right back.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host a show, Climate Change Beyond Outrage. In it, we go beyond outrage to look at solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. Join me every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time. See you then.
Aloha! Hello, my name is Patrick Bratton. I'm host at Global Connections here at ThinkTech Hawaii. We broadcast live every Thursday at 1 p.m. We bring Hawaii to the world and the world to Hawaii, talking about international events and various things of interest to the audience. Please join me. I look forward to talking with you and having you get to meet some of my guests. Aloha.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on ThinkTech Hawaii every Friday at 3 p.m. We address issues of importance for those of us who live here on the most isolated landmass on the planet. Please come join me Fridays at 3 p.m. Mahalo.
He's good.
We're back. We're honored to have Rich Turbin, the chair of the East-West Center Board of Governors, with us today here on Asia in Review, talking about transitions at the East-West Center. So and the possibilities are enormous, because now we're in a transition. We've had a few years with the shift, I forget the word for it.
The tilt to the tilt to the east, but yeah, President Obama used a basketball pivot.
Pivot.
Pivot to the east.
Pivot.
Supposedly they wanted to have a basketball terminology for that, the Secretary of State, so President Obama would understand it,
We are in the middle of that,
Yeah.
the pivot. And the pivot's not yet finished. The pivot is an important part of American foreign policy, whoever the president is, although I think some presidents are going to handle it differently. And after all, the Secretary of State works for the president, which will affect you, I think. Well, here we are, with all these fantastic possibilities in a world that is in transition. And this job hunt is really important, not only for the East-West Center, but for the country, because it's going to make a difference. It's going to build those bridges at a time of transition and maybe a time of disruption, too.
Right.
So what kind of personality are you looking for? A man or a woman? It could be either. An American is probably better to understand and represent the U.S. in the work that goes forward now. But what kind of initiatives should this person be thinking of? What areas of activity should this person be? And when the interview happens, I'm sure you'll be there.
I intend to.
What would you like to hear in terms of the innovation, the expansion, the new initiatives this person has to suggest?
Right. Well, I think first we have to look at the characteristics. It needs to be first of all a distinguished woman or man who gets respect, or receives respect when she travels around the Asia-Pacific world, when she or he goes to China or Fiji or New Zealand or Japan, Taiwan. That person has to garner respect. So it needs to be a distinguished individual who has worked in the Asia-Pacific basin, who can have entry and meet with presidents and prime ministers and parliamentary leaders and economic leaders. So we need an individual like that. We also need an individual who can garner respect when he or she goes to Washington, D.C., because half our funding is received from the U.S. Congress, so it has to be somebody who can knock on the doors of members of the Senate Appropriations Committee and be respected. And so the senators, when they vote the funding, can say, I don't have any qualms funding an organization run by Ms. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so or Dr. So-and-so. So it has to be an individual like that. It has to be an individual who has some managerial experience, because there's this big management quotient.
300 employees.
300 employees. I mean, that's a pretty big job. I mean, obviously there are, CFOs and other directors who do management, but this individual has to be a management leader, a management innovator. And finally, fundraising has become a more and more important role of the center. Bear in mind that money-wise, income-wise, we are about at our peak right now as far as having $30 million plus a year in income. We do a lot of work for that amount of money. But initially, that was the congressional appropriation. There was a period of time when we received approximately $30 million in congressional appropriation. And that figure has been cut in half, basically, for many, many years. But the good news is we've made it up. We've made it up through receiving grants. We receive grants from other major Asian nations, and I'll include the United States as a major Asian nation, obviously. But for example, some years ago, we received a grant of $5 million from the Sultan of Brunei, the small nation of Brunei.
For him,
Asia.
pocket change.
Yeah, I'd say, maybe so, before the oil prices have dropped.
That's true.
Yeah, but that money but that money was used for a specific purpose, and the purpose was to train English language teachers for the 10 nations of the ASEAN group.
Yeah.
Southeast Asia has developed their own, like, European Union type
This
group.
is a great thing.
Called
It's an important
ASEAN.
thing.
The 10 nations on the southern periphery of Asia, the major, Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, the Philippines, all of those nations. Well, they speak many, many different languages, but they want to have English as their lingua franca, as their common language. So they have to train a lot of English language teachers.
Yeah.
And that's what the East-West Center is doing. We
It's
have
great
that
you
job.
found a way to get funding from countries in Asia.
Right.
It wasn't always thus. I mean, at the outset in the 60s, it was all from Congress. We were the East-West Center was bringing in a lot of Southeast Asian students, and I knew some of them. The U.S. was funding that in order to build that bridge with Vietnam. It was part of the Vietnam era and, the initiative about Vietnam. But recently, we've all been aware that Congress, in its wisdom, has seen fit to cut your budget, at least the funds from the federal government. And it's great that you've been able to recoup that somehow and keep on a steady keel. This is a great success story, actually, for the East-West Center.
Right. Well, and our new president has to be good at securing those funds. I think I have to acknowledge, President Charles Morrison. He did a great job securing these grants. He would fly to, various nations, and he would come back with a grant commitment for $500,000 or $1 million from China or Japan or Taiwan or New Zealand, Australia.
It shows the East-West Center has a lot of friends out there.
Yeah,
That's what it shows.
Yeah.
The chips are down, your friends will help you.
Yeah, the East-West Center, we have over 60,000 alumni since 1960. We're probably getting close to 70,000 at this point. So we have, friends, we have committed, we have tremendous stock of goodwill throughout Asia. We have alumni meetings every 2 years.
And they come.
Yeah, well,
Not 60,000 of them. But
not 60,000, I know, but we just had one in Manila in January.
Right.
And, we had more than 300 alumni show up and actually, raised a lot of money at that alumni meeting.
Great.
The president of Aquino from the Philippines, he was a keynote speaker. He kick-started the program. We had a wonderful reception at the U.S. Embassy there. So it's always like that.
So
you know?
it's more outreach maybe than it ever was.
Yeah.
Because of the need to get funding in many places. And there's all these possibilities for conferences that are Hawaii-based. That's a win-win,
Right.
win-win-win because Hawaii needs that. APEC was a good example, of a Hawaii-based conference involving all of Asia Pacific. And it tantalized us, I think, it tantalized me anyway, to think that although APEC is a federal, program, federal conference, at the diplomatic level, the State Department level, if not the presidential level, is only 21, it's got 21 members as I recall, and it rotates, so we
Right.
won't see another federal APEC here for a good, almost 20 years as it goes.
Minimally, yeah.
But it's entirely possible, is it not, that your new president will decide to have a kind of mini APEC here.
Right.
And generate it through the East-West Center. And a win-win-win for everybody. No
Correct.
reason why we can't do that, and that could be a great initiative, yeah.
Right. I know that's something that we've been talking about at the East-West Center, to have, a yearly conference, the mini APEC type conference, and that's maybe something that, we can kickstart with the new president. So at any event, that's what we're looking for in the, in the individual. Diplomatic experience certainly will be very important, but we don't want to have any preconceived ideas about who the individual is going to be, and then of course when we zero in on an individual, we have to strike a deal, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, and that's the old problem, trying to find a national figure and then cutting a deal. But it strikes me though that as you mentioned on Wednesday, I think there'll be the Pacific Forum CSIS meeting with a strong contingent of diplomatic retirees there who might conceivably qualify or at least be very interested in this position.
Right.
So you want to talk to Ralph Cosa and get up there and have a minute just
I'm
to
going.
explain
Yeah.
to these guys that the job is open. Wouldn't that
They
be
know,
something?
believe me, they know about it. They all know it. They all know the job's open, and I'm sure we're going to get some applications for that quarter.
Good. I want to follow the story with you.
Yeah.
Richard Turbin, chair of the East-West Center Board of Governors, here on Asia in Review, talking about transition at the East-West Center. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Stan Osserman, and I host the show every Friday here on Think Tech Hawaii called Stan the Energy Man. We talk about everything energy, from anaerobic digesters to batteries to hydrogen fuel cell and grid power. And we do that to keep you informed on the latest technology that's out there and the things that are going on in Hawaii. We broadcast every Friday from noon until 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll tune in. So sometimes we'll be on Think Tech, and sometimes we'll be on Olelo Channel 54, and I'd like you to listen in to me and join me every Friday. We'll see you then. Aloha.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on Think Tech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy, every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to seeing you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
We're back. We're live with Rich Turbin, the chair of the East-West Center Board of Governors at Asia in Review. We're talking about transition at the East-West Center. He was recently elected. His term is 1 year, but it could be as much as 3 years. Am I right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And the world is his oyster, literally.
I know.
I envy you a lot.
Yes, I know. It's a great gig. Of course, we don't get paid for doing this. It's volunteer work, but it's a labor of love.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most wonderful things about living in Hawaii. So much at the crossroads, between, North America, Asia, Oceania, the Pacific world. I mean, we're in the center of it all. And, my God, the Pacific Asia basin, that's, more than 50% of the world.
Yeah, but we can't be complacent about it. We have to make that happen. We have to advance that. And for example, in April, we're doing a show with Mark Shklov about international arbitration. This has been discussed for many years,
Right,
but
right.
I think it may actually happen. Hawaii can be sort of Geneva for international arbitration. And you are at the East West Center, in the same kind of place. And you have the possibility of making Hawaii an international center through the East West Center. So the question is, can that be done? How can it be done? And I suppose one thing you mentioned during the break that I would ask you about is in Asia, people see the East-West Center perhaps as more important to them than people in Hawaii see the East-West Center.
Oh, yeah, that's my observation. I mean, of course, I've been to Asia approximately 4 times since I've been on the East-West Center board. On East-West Center, 4 East-West Center events. I've been to Yangon, Myanmar for the biannual media conference, which we should talk about a little bit, and then to 2 alumni meetings in Okinawa and Manila. And it really is so striking how important the East-West Center are to the Asian leaders in politics and economics and journalism and teaching. It's a really big deal. I mean, we were when we were in also went to Beijing. When we have these meetings, we're on the front page of the newspapers. The China Daily News. 2 days in a row, we were on the front page of the China Daily News. I mean, that's the most important. That's the English language newspaper in China. But we were also in the front page of the Chinese newspapers. Likewise, the Manila newspapers. Certainly the Okinawa deal. It's page 1 news when the East-West Center is in town in these major Asian capitals.
So it wouldn't hurt if you were page 1 news here too.
Right. I think we were on the front page of the local news section 2 Saturdays ago, about Charles Morrison's retirement. But
we need more than that. We can't take you for granted, really.
Hawaii cannot take the East-West Center for granted. I mean, it's just one of the major intellectual, international, politically important assets of Hawaii. We're so fortunate that we have it here. And I'd urge the listeners, go to the East-West Center campus at the University of Hawaii. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful. It's on the Manoa Valley side of the UH campus. 4 beautiful buildings. That was built by that world-renowned architect, I.M. Pai, the Taiwanese-born architect. I mean, the architecture is stunning.
He's the same guy that built the Louvre. There's a central building in the center of the Louvre.
And that's right, in
Paris.
Paris. Yep.
He built that.
Yes.
I
mean, he's one of the most important architects of our era. And he built the East-West Center. It's stunningly beautiful. And then, of course, we have the Japanese Garden. They're just an absolutely lovely place to walk around and contemplate.
What's the website so people can look it up?
Yeah, I mean, East-West Center,
.org.
.org.
Yeah.
And of course, our president, President Obama has a close relationship with the East-West Center. His mother was an East-West Center grantee. His father studied at the East-West Center. He was a graduate student at University of Hawaii. They met at the East-West Center.
That is something. You heard it here at Think Tech.
Yeah.
And the East-West Center has this host family program now for years, since the beginning, really.
Right, it's
where
wonderful.
local families can take in students from the East-West Center who are studying at the East-West Center and take them in their homes, or adopt them essentially,
Exactly.
and take care of them through the season. And this is a very valuable program, and still exists, I think. Yeah.
Oh yes.
And a lot of
course.
people I know have, including my wife and I, have taken host
Oh, thank you,
students.
Jay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No, we have a lot of programs. I mean, you can check the website. There's all kinds of fascinating programs. There's all kind of fascinating lectures and programs. We have, leading diplomats, ambassadors from all over the world coming to the East-West Center, and you have opportunity to meet them, form relationships. I mean, these are like the most important diplomats in the world. And then we'll have a wonderful arts program. There's a fabulous East-West Center gallery, which is on the ground floor of Burns Hall, the administrative building for the East-West Center. And we have wonderful, wonderful artistic programs, artistic events there, music events, lecture series. It's
a celebration.
Yeah, it's really top notch.
Yeah. So you're different than Charles Morrison, or than the kind of administrator Charles Morrison has been, because you're from Bishop Street. You've had a long career practicing law in Bishop Street and in the community. You know the state political instrumentalities, and for that matter, the city political instrumentalities and people. And so you are a great connector person as chair. This has got to be important for us to have you there, so you can connect the East-West Center with the community in general of Hawaii. Yeah.
I think, yes, that is very important, and that's something that I intend to do, that we intend to do. I mean, I know East-West Center has a good relationship with the business community and the legal community, but it can be better, it can be improved. The East-West Center, we've been around now for over 50 years, for 55 years. We just had our 55th celebration, a major celebration, and we need to reintroduce the East-West Center to the younger generation of people. The millennials, the group coming in after the millennials. I mean, they know intuitively how important internationalism is, and how important it is to connect the United States and Hawaii specifically with Asia. But we have to reintroduce the East-West Center to them and explain how the East-West Center is such an important part of that.
Yeah. A friend of mine took me out to lunch a year ago, and the reason was he wanted me to tell him what I thought his young son, who was just graduating from college, should do. And I said, send him to Asia. Send him to live in China.
Yes.
What an
Yes.
eye-opener that is, and it's the perfect time after you graduate. But he didn't do that, and a lot of people think about it and they don't do it. The thing about the East-West Center, though, it's an entry point for local kids, families,
Right.
those kids who just graduated college, to connect up with the diplomats, the students at the East-West Center, and sort of get something going. Sort of the way the Inter-Pacific Bar Association that Mark Sklav has done, and the Shanghai Hawaii Lawyer Exchange Program. You've been involved in that. So we've got to find a million ways to connect.
Right.
And the East-West Center can be a way for young people to get all those millennials who need to understand the world,
Right.
even without actually going there.
Right. Well, I did have a conversation with Governor Ige about it, and former Governor Ariyoshi, who is Governor Ige's representative on the board.
Very dedicated man.
Yeah, very, very dedicated, and they would really like the East-West Center to kind of re-emphasize its educational role. We have to bear in mind that when the East-West Center began, it was before the days where, young Asian students, could afford to go to Harvard, Stanford, Cornell, Berkeley, the major schools. So a young, smart Asian student who didn't have any income, their big opportunity to get an American education was to be awarded an East-West Center grant.
Very prestigious grant.
Yeah, that East-West Center, being an East-West Center grantee, like I was given the opportunity to have one in 1970. But of course, nowadays, the children of the wealthy, business people in Asia, well, they want to send their students to, an Ivy League school. But there still is a whole cohort of young Asian people, young Asian students who would love to be awarded an East-West Center grant and come out here. And likewise, there's Hawaii students and American students who would love to be awarded an East-West Center grant and come out here and come to and study in Asia or in the Pacific arena. And there's also an opportunity for Hawaii, for the city of Honolulu and the state of Hawaii, to become an educational center for the Pacific. Somebody gave me a statistic last year that we basically have, Hawaii has the same population as the state of Maine, while Maine has 30 schools, 30 higher degree award schools, universities and colleges, while Hawaii has 3, University of Hawaii, HPU, Chaminade. We can do better. We can do better as far as attracting Asian students to be educated here in Hawaii, the middle of the Pacific.
You could do it through the East-West
And
Center.
the East-West Center, yeah, and the East-West Center. We're already doing it, but we can expand our educational programs.
Why do I feel a certain vitality, Rich? I feel it. I feel it going forward.
Thanks.
The future, the next few years, be very exciting at the East-West Center with you, with a new president, with new ideas, with a sort of a revitalization of the old notion way back 55 years ago, and maybe with additional funding from hither and yon. The East-West Center is the center of our Asia-Pacific connection, and I'm looking forward to more
And
with you.
I do want to emphasize that the East-West Center is presently extremely vital, that I think Charles Morrison is retiring while at the top of his game. He's done a great job, but it's very interesting and exciting, always interesting and exciting to have new leadership and enter a new era.
Well, come back and talk to us some more about it, will you?
Absolutely, I promise.
Rich Turbin, the new chair of the East-West Center Board of Governors, here on Asia in Review, Transition of the East-West Center. He'll be back for more.